Are you ready to learn how to identify the stories that you're making up in your head? Like I said, sometimes it's hard to identify them because we've been living with them so long. I want you to know you can release your stories, but only whenever you decide you're tired of believing them. Then you set the wheels in motion to change your life. So, are you ready to believe and do things differently? Let's identify your story. Like I said, many times we can't even see our story. We are so used to living in our stories, we can't even recognize them. We can't identify them. The first step in changing a limiting belief is to identify it. I told myself my story for so long, I didn't think of it as a story at all. I thought of it as true. I needed to push through, I needed to be a strong woman, and it took a lot of thought before I even realized that this was the story. You know, when you change the limiting stories that you tell yourself, you'll be able to change your life. I thought I couldn't ask for help. When I learned to ask for help, it was amazing. So, what limiting stories are you telling yourself? Maybe it's that you'll never get to your perfect weight or you'll never get healthy. Maybe it's that you'll never be loved. You'll never earn over a certain amount of money. Maybe you think you're not good enough, or you can't succeed. You can't have the success you deserve. All of these things are stories. So I want you to grab a pen, grab some paper, go get it, stop the tape if you need to, and start unearthing your own limiting decisions by taking these steps. You ready? I want you to become aware of the narrator. Half the battle is simply waking up and becoming conscious of all the commentary that's running through our minds. Most people, they're oblivious to it. This week, your first play work exercise is to simply notice the stories that you're telling yourself. What could be holding you back? When you go into a closed state, before you go into your listening, in the listening practice, I'd like you to ask yourself, am I telling myself a story right now? Notice the stories and then jot that story down. Get it on paper. Seeing it will really sink it in. And then write what your narrator says. Write it down word for word. Okay, it's really good to get the exact words or even the word you think it is. The narrator might be saying, I'll never reach my goals, or I'm not good enough. I'll never get to the perfect health or my perfect weight. I know this condition is incurable because the doctors told me it was. Now, we might not even hear these words, but what is it that you're thinking all the time? Think about what you're bogged down with. How do you feel about it? Are you feeling anxious, angry, hopeless? Now stay with that emotion. Breathe into the emotion. Angry, hopeless, whatever it is. Acknowledge it for a moment. Feel it in your body. And listen. What's the limiting belief? What is it? It should come up. It bubbles up for you. For example, anxiety, it might be, what will people think of me? Anger might reflect something like, oh, life's not fair for people like me. It's not worth it. Underneath hopelessness, it might be, I'm just not strong enough, smart enough to figure this out. I want you to really go inside. See what your stories are trying to tell you. Write it down and then go into your listening practice. All these things, they keep you closed. You have to first realize that you created your story. No one else did. It was just you. And then when you accept this fact that you created your story, it'll return you to your power to change your story. So evaluate the story that the narrator is telling. It's easy to confuse the narrator's voice with the truth. So kind of decipher that. But the narrator is the only offering one perspective. So only one perspective. It's based on your previous experiences. And too often, it's fear. We don't have to accept the version of reality that the narrator is telling us, especially if it's disempowering and it prevents us from reaching our goals. So I'd like you to ask yourself, is this storyline just a limiting belief? What do you say to yourself to justify why what you want is not working? Now, take a deep breath. Acknowledge that these beliefs are not truths. This is often the hardest step, but limitations are real. Here's the place where choice comes in. Which are you more interested in? Defending your limitations? No, that's not me. Or defending them to the death, or achieving your goals, what you desire for your body and for your life. So Evelyn Waugh said, when we argue for our limitations, we get to keep them. I don't think you want to keep them, right? You choose. There's so many more limiting beliefs: money, relationships, career. I could go on and on. But the point is to start becoming aware of your limiting stories. Make a conscious decision to pivot with your listening practice and tell a more empowering version. Just affirm what you know is true. You can either live a life based on your past experiences or your current feelings or the truth. As many of my mentors often say, most people, they doubt their beliefs and believe their doubts. Hey, I want you to do just the opposite. I want you to know and do what you know to be true. Use the listening practice when you feel closed. And then do the I am closed, and this means what I'm thinking is not true and not going to happen. Start to observe the good things that could happen, the joy, the love, the beauty. What could happen for you? Stay in your listening practice for 30 to 90 seconds. Feel that. And then pretend like you're listening to an audiobook or watching a movie. Let yourself see the narrative of what stories are running in your life, in your head. Our stories, they're very real to us. Your mind, it's convinced that this story is going to happen. It's a fraidy cat. And that's why we say, what I'm thinking is not true and not going to happen.